In the heart of Edinburgh, where ancient stones guard centuries of royal history, a group of tourists thought it would be amusing to mock a Stirling Palace guard. They didn't expect what happened next, a lesson in respect that would leave them speechless and change their perspective forever. This is the story of how one guard's composed response to deliberate provocation became a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in reaction, but in dignity. Subscribe to hear more incredible stories of courage and honor. Hit that notification bell to never miss our latest uploads. The late summer sun cast long shadows across the ancient stones of Stirling Palace, its weathered walls standing proud against the Edinburgh skyline. Golden rays danced off the palace's historic clock tower, marking another peaceful August morning as tourists gathered in throngs beneath its watchful face. The air hummed with excited chatter in various languages, cameras clicking in rapid succession, as visitors from around the world captured their memories of Scotland's most prestigious royal residence. Among the sea of faces and flashing phones stood William Anderson, known as Will to his fellow guards, his crimson uniform pristine and his posture unwavering. At 28, he had already mastered the art of stillness that defined the Stirling Palace guards. His polished boots reflected the morning light, and his ceremonial bearskin cap sat perfectly aligned on his head, casting a slight shadow over his stoic features. The East Gate, where Will stood his post, was particularly busy this morning. Tour buses had begun arriving earlier than usual, disgorging groups of eager visitors onto the gleaming cobblestones of the grand ceremonial square. Will maintained his forward gaze, though his peripheral vision caught every movement, every gesture, a skill honed during his military service years before joining the Palace Guard. "Look at him. He's like a statue," a young child whispered, in awe, tugging at her mother's sleeve. Will's expression remained unchanged, though inwardly he appreciated the innocent wonder in the child's voice. This was the part of his job he enjoyed most, representing centuries of tradition and dignity, for people who traveled thousands of miles to witness it. However, the peaceful atmosphere shifted subtly when a particularly boisterous group of American tourists approached the East Gate. Will's trained ear picked up their voices before they came into view, loud and carrying an edge of mischief that immediately put him on alert. "Dude, I bet you can't make him smile," one voice rang out, belonging to Ryan Thompson, a young man in his mid-20s wearing a bright Hawaiian shirt that seemed to mock the palace's solemnity. His friends, Jake Miller, Chris Bennett, Amy Parker, and Lucy Walsh, clustered around him, smartphones already raised and recording. David Cooper, Will's fellow guard stationed across the gate, caught his eye for a fraction of a second. They had worked together long enough to recognize when a situation might require extra vigilance. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell had briefed them just that morning about maintaining composure during peak tourist season, emphasizing the importance of upholding the palace's dignity no matter the provocation. £5 says I can get him to crack," Ryan announced loudly, his voice carrying across the square. Several other tourists turned to watch, some looking uncomfortable, others curious. Will remained motionless, his training kicking in as he focused on a distant point beyond the growing crowd. Ryan sauntered closer, his confidence bolstered by his friends' encouraging laughs. "Hey, British boy," he called out, waving his hand, in front of Will's face. "Do they pay you extra to act like a robot, or is that just a natural talent?" Will's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his expression remained neutral. He had handled far worse during his military service, and palace protocol was clear: maintain composure unless there was a direct threat to security. "Maybe he's broken," Jake Miller chimed in, emboldened by his friend's behavior. "Should we check if he needs new batteries?" The group erupted in laughter, their phones recording every moment of their attempted provocation. Lucy Walsh, though part of the group, shifted uncomfortably. "Guys, maybe we should..." she started, but her words were drowned out by the escalating taunts of her companions. The morning sun continued its climb in the sky, casting shorter shadows as the tension at Stirling Palace's east gate began to build. The morning crowd at Stirling Palace had swollen considerably, with tourists forming a loose semicircle around Will's post at the east gate. Ryan Thompson and his friends had created an unwanted spectacle, their taunting drawing more attention. With each passing minute, some onlookers filmed the scene with their phones, while others watched with a mix of disapproval and morbid curiosity. David Cooper maintained his position across the gate, but his eyes frequently darted toward his fellow guard. Through years of military training and palace service together, they had developed an almost telepathic understanding. Will could sense David's concern, though neither man betrayed any outward sign of communication. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell's words from their morning briefing echoed in Will's mind. "Remember, gentlemen, you're not just guards, you're living symbols of a centuries-old tradition. Your composure is your strength." Will had taken those words to heart, as he did every aspect of his duty. Yet now, with Ryan's group growing bolder, that composure was being tested in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Hey guys, check this out," Ryan announced, pulling out his phone and approaching even closer to Will. "I'm going to get the perfect TikTok moment." He started an exaggerated march, mimicking the guard's ceremonial walk in a way that made his friends burst into fresh peals of laughter. Amy Parker, one of the group members, joined in, her designer handbag swinging as she attempted the same mocking strut. "Oh my God, Ryan, you're doing it all wrong," she giggled, adjusting her sunglasses. "It's more like this." She lifted her chin in an exaggerated manner, trying to match Will's dignified posture. The crowd had grown larger now, and Will could hear murmurs of disapproval from some of the other tourists. An elderly Scottish woman shook her head, muttering something about disrespectful Americans, while a German family quickly ushered their children away from the scene. Lucy Walsh, still hanging back from her friends, looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Guys, seriously, this isn't funny anymore," she tried again, her voice carrying a note of genuine concern. "We're making everyone uncomfortable." Chris Bennett, the tallest of the group, waved off her concerns. "Oh, come on, Lucy. It's all in good fun. Besides, this is what these guards are here for. Entertainment, right?" He pulled out his own phone, approaching Will from another angle. "Hey man, give us a smile for Instagram. Your family back home might see it." Will's military training kicked in harder now, his mind automatically recalling similar situations. During his service years, he had faced down aggressive protesters, handled volatile crowds, and maintained his cool under genuine threats. These tourists, though irritating, were nothing compared to those experiences. Still, there was something particularly grating about their casual disrespect for everything the uniform represented. From the corner of his eye, Will caught movement near the palace entrance. A junior guard was speaking quietly into his radio, likely reporting the situation to Commander Mitchell. Protocol dictated that any unusual disturbance be reported, even if it didn't constitute a direct threat. Jake Miller, perhaps noticing Will's subtle attention shift, decided to up the ante. He pulled out a small bag of chips from his backpack and began crunching them loudly, deliberately letting crumbs fall near Will's polished boots. "Maybe he's hungry," Jake suggested with a smirk. "These guys probably aren't allowed lunch breaks in their robot programming." Ryan laughed, moving to stand directly in Will's line of sight. "Come on, man. We're just trying to make your day more interesting. Don't you get bored just standing here?" He waved his hand in front of Will's face again, this time coming dangerously close to touching his uniform. The atmosphere shifted perceptibly. Other tourists who had been watching began to voice their disapproval more openly. A British father stepped forward, his young son clutching his hand. "That's quite enough," he called out to Ryan's group. "Show some respect." Ryan turned, his expression darkening slightly. "Mind your own business, mate," he shot back, the mock British accent he used dripping with sarcasm. "We're just having some fun." Will remained motionless, but his mind was racing through protocols and procedures. He had been trained for various scenarios: terrorist threats, suspicious packages, aggressive protesters, but dealing with disrespectful tourists required a different kind of strength. It was about maintaining the dignity of the position, while ensuring the situation didn't escalate. Lucy Walsh finally broke away from her group, approaching Ryan with determination. "This is embarrassing," she hissed, trying to pull him back. "We're making complete fools of ourselves." "Lighten up, Lucy," Ryan replied, shrugging off her hand. If he didn't want attention, he wouldn't be dressed like a Christmas nutcracker. This earned another round of laughter from Jake and Chris, though Amy had begun to look as uncomfortable as Lucy. The summer sun beat down on the cobblestones, and Will could feel sweat beginning to form under his heavy ceremonial uniform. Yet his posture remained perfect, his gaze steady, his dignity intact.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Years of training had taught him that true strength often lay in restraint rather than reaction. David Cooper, still at his post across the gate, had subtly shifted his position to better observe the situation. Though protocol prevented direct intervention without cause, both guards were acutely aware that the situation was balancing on a knife's edge. Commander Mitchell's voice crackled quietly over their earpieces. "Status report, East Gate." It was a standard check-in, but Will knew she was monitoring the situation. Through barely moving lips, he murmured the code for "situation contained, monitoring required." The response was immediate. "Understood. Maintain position. Support standing by." As the morning wore on, the taunting continued, each jibe and mock salute testing Will's resolve. Yet with each passing moment, he stood as an embodiment of the very tradition and dignity his tormentors failed to understand. Little did they know, their childish display was about to backfire in a way none of them could have anticipated. The situation at Stirling Palace's East Gate had reached a critical point as the morning sun climbed higher in the Edinburgh sky. Ryan Thompson and his friends had spent nearly an hour attempting to provoke a reaction from Will Anderson, their taunts growing increasingly bold with each passing minute. The crowd of onlookers had swelled, creating an impromptu amphitheater around the unfolding scene. "I bet he's not even really British," Ryan announced loudly, circling Will like a playground bully. "Probably some guy they hired from a temp agency. Hey buddy, blink twice if you're actually from Ohio." His friends laughed, though Lucy Walsh and Amy Parker had retreated to the periphery of the group, their initial enthusiasm completely evaporated. Will maintained his forward gaze, but his military-trained senses were acutely aware of every movement around him. He could hear David Cooper's measured breathing from across the gate, feel the disapproving murmurs from the crowd, and sense the growing tension in the air. The weight of his ceremonial uniform felt heavier with each passing moment, though his posture remained impeccable. A young British couple pushed through the crowd, the woman visibly pregnant and looking uncomfortable. In the summer heat, protocol dictated that guards could assist visitors in genuine distress, and Will noticed them trying to make their way toward the palace entrance. Ryan and his friends, absorbed in their performance, were blocking the path. "Excuse me," the husband said politely. "Could we get through? My wife needs to sit down." Jake Miller turned, rolling his eyes. "There's plenty of space, just go around," he said dismissively, before turning back to Will. "Watch this, I bet I can make him sneeze." He pulled out a small bottle of cologne and started spraying it in Will's direction. The pregnant woman coughed, the strong scent clearly bothering her. Her husband's face darkened. "That's enough, you're being completely inappropriate." Chris Bennett stepped forward, his tall frame towering over the British man. "Or what? You going to get your toy soldier here to help?" He jerked a thumb toward Will. "Newsflash, he's just decoration." The tension in the crowd shifted palpably. Several people pulled out phones, but now they weren't filming for entertainment. They were documenting what felt like an impending confrontation. Commander Mitchell's voice came through Will's earpiece again. "Situation assessment needed. Eastgate." Before Will could respond, Ryan decided to escalate his performance. He stepped directly in front of Will, his face inches from the guards, and reached out toward the ceremonial rifle slung across Will's chest. "I wonder if this thing is even real." In one fluid motion, Will's hand shot up, catching Ryan's wrist. Before he could touch the weapon, the movement was so swift, so precise, that it took everyone a moment to register what had happened. Will's expression remained neutral, but his grip was firm, not harmful, but unmistakably authoritative. "Step back, sir!" Will spoke for the first time, his voice clear and commanding. "Attempting to touch a guard's weapon is a serious offense." The crowd fell silent. Ryan's cocky smile faltered as he tried to pull his hand away, but Will's grip remained steady. David Cooper had taken 2 steps forward, his own stance shifting subtly into a defensive position. "The weapon I carry is real," Will continued, his voice carrying across the now hushed courtyard. "The uniform I wear is real. The tradition I represent is real. And your behavior is putting yourself and others at risk." He released Ryan's wrist. With a controlled movement, his eyes now locked directly onto the young man's increasingly pale face. Ryan stumbled backward, rubbing his wrist more from shock than pain. His friends had frozen in place, the phones in their hands lowering slowly, as the reality of the situation sank in. "But you're not supposed to move," Jake stammered, his earlier bravado evaporating. "You're supposed to just stand there." "We are guards, Mr. Miller, not statues," Will replied, surprising Jake by using his name. He'd heard it called out enough times during their taunts. "We maintain stillness out of discipline, not inability. We show restraint out of duty, not weakness." Commander Elizabeth Mitchell emerged from the palace entrance, her uniform pristine and her expression stern. "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" she asked, though her tone made it clear she knew exactly what had been happening. "These individuals were attempting to interfere with palace security, Commander," Will reported formally, his posture returning to its ceremonial position, including an attempt to touch military equipment. Ryan's face had lost all color. "We were just having some fun," he protested weakly, but even his friends were now backing away from him. "Fun?" Commander Mitchell's eyebrow arched. "Harassing a guard, disrupting palace operations, and attempting to touch a military weapon. Perhaps we should discuss your definition of fun with the Palace Security Office." Lucy Walsh stepped forward, her face flushed with embarrassment. "We're so sorry," she said quickly. "We got carried away. Ryan, apologize." Ryan looked around, suddenly aware that every face in the crowd was staring at him with disapproval. His earlier confidence had completely crumbled. I'm sorry," he muttered. "We didn't mean any harm." "Intent doesn't always match impact, young man," Commander Mitchell replied. "The Sterling Palace Guards represent centuries of tradition, discipline, and service. They are highly trained military personnel who choose stillness as a sign of respect for this institution and its visitors. Their restraint is a demonstration of strength, not an invitation for abuse." The pregnant woman who had tried to pass earlier spoke up from the crowd. "They've been at this for ages, harassing him and blocking people's way. It's been horrible to watch." Commander Mitchell's expression hardened further. "I see. In that case, I believe we need to have a more formal discussion about this incident. Please follow me." As Brian and his friends were led away, the crowd began to disperse, many people stopping to nod respectfully at Will. The pregnant couple finally made their way through, the husband pausing briefly. "Thank you," he said quietly. "That was very well handled." Will gave an almost imperceptible nod, returning to his complete ceremonial stillness. David Cooper resumed his position across the gate, and to all appearances, everything returned to normal. But something had changed. The tourists who now passed by showed a new level of respect, their photos taken from a respectful distance, their children hushed with genuine reverence rather than forced quiet. The incident would later become a teaching moment during guard training sessions, an example of how to maintain dignity while ensuring security. But for now, Will Anderson stood his post, the summer sun continuing its arc across the Edinburgh sky, his composure unshaken, his duty unwavering. The afternoon sun had shifted positions over Stirling Palace, casting different shadows across the ancient cobblestones as Will Anderson maintained his post at the East Gate. The morning's incident with Ryan Thompson and his group had created ripples throughout the palace security system, though visitors would never have guessed it from Will's perfectly maintained composure. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell had spent over an hour with the troublemakers in the palace security office, her voice carrying authority that even the most rebellious tourist couldn't ignore. Through the palace's internal communication system, Will had learned that Ryan and his friends were issued formal warnings and their details recorded in the palace security database. More significantly, they were barred from entering any royal properties for the next 12 months. David Cooper, still stationed across the gate, had maintained radio silence since the incident, but his subtle nod when their eyes met during the changing of positions spoke volumes. They had worked together long enough to read volumes in such small gestures. The incident would undoubtedly be discussed during their next break, analyzing every moment to improve their response protocols. As the afternoon wore on, a different kind of tourist began approaching Will's post. These weren't the usual photo-seeking visitors. These were people who had witnessed the morning's events, returning with a new perspective. Many nodded respectfully as they passed, some even stopping to apologize for not speaking up sooner against the harassment. "The way you handled that was incredible," one elderly gentleman commented as he walked past, his Scottish accent thick with pride. "Showed them what real dignity looks like, lad." A group of young military cadets on a training visit stopped to observe Will's stance, their instructor using him as an example of perfect posture and discipline. "Notice how Guard Anderson maintains his position," the instructor explained quietly. "Even after this morning's incident, there's no sign of tension or distraction in his bearing. That's what we call professional excellence." Around mid-afternoon, Lucy Walsh returned alone, standing at a respectful distance from Will's post. Her earlier embarrassment had been replaced by what appeared to be genuine remorse. She waited patiently until Commander Mitchell appeared for a routine inspection. "Commander," Lucy called out softly, "may I speak with you for a moment?" Elizabeth Mitchell assessed the young woman with a measured gaze before nodding. "Of course, Miss Walsh. Please step this way." Will couldn't hear their conversation, but he could see them speaking near the palace entrance. Lucy appeared to be explaining something, occasionally gesturing toward her phone. Commander Mitchell's expression remained professional, but there was a slight softening around her eyes. After their conversation, Commander Mitchell approached Will's post, standing within his peripheral vision. "Guard Anderson, it appears Miss Walsh has provided us with some valuable information. It seems Mr. Thompson and his friends have a history of similar behavior at other historical sites. They've been running a social media channel dedicated to provoking reactions from ceremonial guards and posting the videos online." Will maintained his forward gaze, but he processed this information carefully. It explained their practiced approach and ready cameras. Commander Mitchell continued, Miss Walsh has agreed to provide evidence of their previous incidents. She's also volunteered to make a formal statement about their intentions today. The commander's voice carried a note of satisfaction. Sometimes, Guard Anderson, maintaining our dignity leads to unexpected allies. Miss Walsh's conscience appears to have gotten the better of her. She's also requested to write a formal apology to the Palace Guard unit. As the commander moved away, Will reflected on how a single incident could cascade into broader consequences. His measured response hadn't just stopped one group's inappropriate behavior, it had potentially prevented similar incidents at other historical sites. Later that afternoon, David Cooper was relieved for his break first. As his replacement took position, David paused briefly near Will. "Commander's calling a special unit meeting tonight," he murmured, barely moving his lips. "Apparently, we're reviewing protocol for social media provocateurs. Your morning entertainment is becoming a training case." The news didn't surprise Will. Stirling Palace's guard unit prided itself on learning from every incident, adapting their protocols while maintaining their traditional dignity. It was this balance of tradition and adaptation that had kept them relevant and respected through centuries of changing times. A fresh wave of tourists approached the East Gate, their cameras ready, but their manner noticeably more respectful than the morning crowd. Word had spread quickly about the incident, and visitors seemed to be going out of their way to demonstrate proper etiquette. "Remember, darling," one mother whispered to her young daughter, loud enough for Will to hear, "these guards are real soldiers. They deserve our respect, not our entertainment." The little girl nodded solemnly, carefully standing at what she imagined was a military-style attention beside Will's post. Her mother snapped a quick photo, then gently led her away. "Thank you, sir," the girl called back, her voice filled with genuine admiration. As the afternoon wore on, Will noticed palace security had quietly increased their presence around the gates. Plain-clothed officers mingled with the crowds, their trained eyes watching for any signs of similar troublemakers. It was a subtle change, one that tourists wouldn't notice, but that reflected the palace's adaptive approach to security. Commander Mitchell made one final pass before the evening shift change. "Excellent work maintaining your post, Guard Anderson," she said formally. "Your conduct today will be noted in your service record." The palace appreciates guards who can balance tradition with necessary action. The sun was beginning to lower in the Edinburgh sky, casting long shadows across the palace grounds. Will's shift would end soon, but his impact on palace protocol would last much longer. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important victories were won not through force, but through unwavering dignity in the face of provocation. As evening approached, Stirling Palace, the golden light of sunset, painted the ancient stones in warm hues of amber and rose. Will Anderson's shift was drawing to a close, but the day's events had set in motion changes that would ripple through the palace's security protocols for months to come. The special unit meeting was scheduled for 1900 hours in the North Wing's conference room, a wood-paneled chamber usually reserved for high-level security briefings. Will made his way there after being relieved from his post, his ceremonial uniform exchanged for the standard palace guard duty attire. David Cooper was already seated when Will arrived, along with 20 other members of the Palace Guard unit. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell stood at the front of the room, her laptop connected to a large display screen. Will noticed several senior security advisors present, including retired Colonel James Harrison, who occasionally consulted on palace security matters. "Take your seats, everyone," Commander Mitchell announced, her voice carrying the same authority it had held during the morning's confrontation. Today's incident has brought to light a growing concern at historical sites worldwide: the phenomenon of social media provocateurs. The screen behind her displayed several social media posts, including some from Ryan Thompson's previous pranks at other locations. Will recognized the same smirking attitude in each thumbnail image. Thanks to Miss Walsh's cooperation, we've identified at least 12 similar incidents at various historical sites across Europe, Mitchell continued. These weren't random acts of disrespect. They were calculated attempts to generate viral content at the expense of ceremonial guards. Colonel Harrison stepped forward, his expression grave. What we're seeing is a trend that exploits our guards' professional discipline for entertainment. These provocateurs understand that our protocols typically prevent immediate response, and they use this knowledge to create increasingly aggressive confrontations. Will listened intently as the colonel pulled up statistics showing a rise in similar incidents at other historical sites. The Royal Horse Guards in London, the Presidential Guard in Athens, even the Swiss Guard at Vatican City, all had reported increased encounters with social media performers seeking reactions. Guard Anderson's handling of today's situation provides us with a valuable template, Commander Mitchell resumed. His response was measured, professional, and within protocols while effectively ending the provocation. We'll be incorporating elements of this incident into our training programs. David Cooper raised his hand. Commander, how do we balance maintaining ceremonial dignity with preventing these situations from escalating? Excellent question, Cooper, Mitchell replied. That's precisely why we're here. We're developing new guidelines that maintain our traditional presence while adapting to modern challenges. The meeting continued for 2 hours, with senior guards sharing experiences and suggesting refinements to existing protocols. Will found himself called upon several times to detail specific aspects of his interaction with Ryan's group. The key moment, Colonel Harrison noted, was Guard Anderson's timing. He didn't react to the taunts or mockery. He acted only when there was a clear security concern with the weapon. That's the standard we need to maintain. As the meeting progressed, Will noticed a subtle shift in how his colleagues viewed the incident. What had started as a simple case of maintaining dignity had evolved into a watershed moment for palace security procedures. We're instituting new training modules, Commander Mitchell announced near the meeting's end. All guards will receive additional instruction in handling social media provocateurs while maintaining ceremonial bearing. Anderson, we'd like you to assist in developing these protocols. Will straightened in his chair. Yes, Commander. I'd be honored. After the meeting, several guards lingered to discuss the day's events. David Cooper approached Will with a slight smile. You've started quite a revolution, mate. Never thought I'd see the day when we'd have social media response protocols. But times change, Will replied, but principles don't. That's what they didn't understand. We stand still by choice, not by limitation. As they walked through the palace corridors, they passed a window overlooking the east gate. The evening guard detail was in position, their silhouettes sharp against the darkening sky. A few tourists still milled about, their behavior noticeably more respectful than the morning crowd. Word travels fast, David observed. Haven't seen a single phone waved in a guard's face since your little demonstration. Will nodded thoughtfully. It's not about the reaction. It's about helping people understand what we represent. Commander Mitchell caught up with them in the main hallway. Anderson, a moment, please. She handed him a folder. Miss Walsh provided these screenshots of their social media accounts. They've taken down most of their guard prank videos and posted an apology. Will opened the folder, scanning the printed pages. Ryan Thompson's latest post was a surprisingly honest admission of wrongdoing, acknowledging the disrespect shown to historical institutions and their guardians. Sometimes, Mitchell continued, the best way to effect change is to maintain your dignity until others recognize their lack of it. The evening air was cooling as Will finally left the palace grounds. his uniform crisp despite the long day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new visitors, and perhaps new provocateurs, but something had shifted, not just in protocol, but in perspective. The ancient stones of Stirling Palace had witnessed centuries of change, yet some things remained constant. The unwavering dedication of its guards, the strength found in dignity, and the power of standing firm in the face of provocation. Will Anderson had demonstrated that adapting to new challenges didn't mean abandoning traditional values. Sometimes it meant finding new ways to uphold them. The following morning arrived at Stirling Palace with a fresh energy in the air. Will Anderson reported for duty just as the first rays of sunlight began to touch the ancient clock tower, casting long shadows across the ceremonial grounds. The events of yesterday had already become part of palace lore, whispered about among the guard changes and discussed in quiet corners of the break room. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell was waiting in the briefing room when Will arrived for the morning meeting. The other guards filed in quietly, their polished boots clicking against the wooden floors. There was a different atmosphere today, a mix of pride and purpose that seemed to electrify the air. "Good morning, unit," Mitchell began, standing at the podium with a stack of newly printed documents. "Before we begin regular assignments, I want to address the changes implemented after yesterday's incident. We've received communication from several other historical sites requesting information about our handling of social media provocateurs." Will stood at parade rest, listening as Mitchell outlined the new protocols. The palace had moved with remarkable speed to formalize the lessons learned from his encounter with Ryan Thompson's group. "Guard Anderson," Mitchell called out, "please step forward." Will approached the podium, his movements precise and measured. The commander handed him a sealed envelope bearing the palace's official crest. "This came from the Palace Administrative Board this morning," she explained. "They've reviewed yesterday's incident and the subsequent social media impact. Your handling of the situation has been commended at the highest levels." David Cooper, standing in the front row, gave an almost imperceptible nod of approval. The other guards maintained their professional composure, but there was a sense of collective pride in the room. "Furthermore," Mitchell continued, "the board has requested that Guard Anderson assist in developing a training module for ceremonial guards across all royal properties. This will be implemented as part of our standard protocol updates." The Beedish news sent a subtle ripple through the assembled guards. It was rare for a single incident to prompt such widespread procedural changes, but the timing had proved perfect. The growing problem of social media provocateurs had been building for months, and Will's measured response had provided a template for future interactions. After the briefing, Will took his position at the East Gate, the same post where yesterday's events had unfolded. The morning sun was bright, promising another warm day in Edinburgh. Tourist buses were already pulling up, disgorging visitors onto the cobblestones. David Cooper, again stationed across the gate, gave Will a meaningful glance as they assumed their posts. They both knew that today would be different. Visitors would be watching with new eyes, their phones still ready, but their attitudes transformed. The first tour group of the day approached, led by a guide who had witnessed yesterday's incident. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced clearly, making sure Will could hear, "the Stirling Palace Guards are active duty military personnel. Their ceremonial stillness represents centuries of discipline and tradition. Please show appropriate respect when taking photographs." Throughout the morning, Will noticed subtle changes in visitor behavior. Tourists maintained respectful distances, parents quietly educated their children about the guards' role, and cameras were raised with consideration rather than intrusion. Around mid-morning, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Lucy Walsh, walking alone, approached the East Gate. She stood at a respectful distance, waiting until another guard came to relieve Will for his scheduled break. "Guard Anderson," she said softly as Will walked past. "I wanted you to know Ryan's video channel has been completely transformed. Instead of guard pranks, he's posted an educational series about military traditions and ceremonial guards. Your response, it changed something in him." Will paused briefly, acknowledging her words with a professional nod before continuing on his way. The impact of yesterday's events was spreading in unexpected ways, transforming not just protocols, but perspectives. During his break, Will reviewed the training materials he would help develop. The palace had moved quickly to formalize the lessons learned, creating comprehensive guidelines for handling similar situations. The new protocols emphasize the balance between maintaining ceremonial dignity and ensuring security, exactly what Will had demonstrated. Commander Mitchell joined him in the break room, carrying a tablet displaying news coverage of yesterday's incident. "The public response has been overwhelming," she noted. "Social media can work both ways. The video of your response has gone viral, but for all the right reasons. People are sharing it as an example of professional excellence." Will reviewed the coverage with interest. The comment sections, usually breeding grounds for cynicism, were filled with respect and admiration for the palace guards. Many people shared stories of their own visits to historical sites, expressing newfound appreciation for ceremonial guards' role. "We've received inquiries from military academies," Mitchell continued. "They want to incorporate this incident into their training on professional bearing and response to provocation." "You've started something significant, Anderson." Returning to his post, Will noticed a group of young military cadets touring the palace grounds. Their instructor was using the East Gate guards as examples of perfect military bearing, explaining how discipline and restraint were forms of strength. The afternoon sun climbed higher and tourists continued to flow through the gates. Will maintained his ceremonial stance, but he was acutely aware of the subtle changes in the atmosphere. Visitors who had seen yesterday's viral video would point him out quietly, their faces showing respect rather than amusement. David Cooper, during a brief moment between tourist groups, spoke quietly. "You've raised the bar for all of us, mate. Every guard at every post is standing a little taller today." The words carried weight, reminding Will that sometimes the most significant changes come not from grand gestures, but from simply doing one's duty with unwavering dignity. The incident with Ryan's group had lasted only minutes, but its impact would resonate through the palace halls for years to come. A week had passed since the incident at Stirling Palace's East Gate, and the changes it sparked continued to spread like ripples in a pond. Will Anderson stood at his post in the crisp morning air, watching as a new day of visitors began to arrive. The palace grounds were especially busy today, with a scheduled visit from a delegation of international military officers interested in the palace's updated security protocols. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell had spent the morning briefing Will about the delegation's visit. "They're particularly interested in how we're adapting traditional ceremonial duties to modern challenges," she had explained during the pre-duty meeting. "Your experience has become something of a case study." The morning sun glinted off the palace windows as the delegation approached the East Gate. Led by Colonel Harrison, the group included military representatives from several European countries, all taking notes as they observed the palace guards in action. "As you can see," Colonel Harrison was explaining, "our guards maintain absolute ceremonial bearing while remaining fully capable of responding to any situation. Last week's incident demonstrated this balance perfectly." Will maintained his position, but he could hear the discussion clearly. A French military attaché asked about specific protocols, and Colonel Harrison directed the group's attention to Will's post. "Guard Anderson's position here at the East Gate has become our primary training example. Notice the slight adjustments in stance that allow for better situational awareness while maintaining ceremonial appearance. David Cooper, at his usual post across the gate, caught Will's eye momentarily. They had both grown accustomed to being the subject of such observations over the past week. The incident had transformed their regular posts into something of a living tutorial for military and security professionals. As the morning progressed, a familiar face appeared among the tourists, a local news reporter who had covered the original story. She stood at a respectful distance, taking notes as she observed the interaction between visitors and guards. The palace had received numerous media requests for follow-up stories, most focusing on the broader implications of the incident for historical site security. Commander Mitchell approached during a quieter moment, speaking softly so only Will could hear. The training module you helped develop is being implemented across all royal properties next month. Your experience is helping guards everywhere handle similar situations. The news gave Will a sense of satisfaction, though his expression remained professionally neutral. What had started as a simple response to provocation had evolved into something much more significant. Around midday, a group of American tourists approached the gate. Unlike Ryan Thompson's group from the previous week, these visitors displayed notable respect, maintaining appropriate distances and speaking in hushed tones. Will could hear their guide explaining the recent changes in palace protocol. The palace guards here have set new standards for handling disruptive behavior, the guide explained. Their response to social media provocateurs has become a model for historical sites worldwide. During his afternoon break, Will reviewed the latest statistics with Commander Mitchell. Reports of provocative behavior at historical sites had decreased significantly since the video of his response went viral. The incident had sparked a broader conversation about respect for ceremonial guards and historical traditions. "We've received letters from guards at other sites," Mitchell shared, showing Will a folder of correspondence. "Many have faced similar challenges with social media performers. Your handling of the situation has given them a framework for maintaining dignity while ensuring security." The impact extended beyond just security protocols. Gift shops at various historical sites had begun including educational materials about ceremonial guards in their offerings. Children's books explaining the importance of respecting traditions were particularly popular. As Will resumed his post for the afternoon shift, he noticed a group of young guards in training observing from nearby. They were part of the first batch to go through the new training protocols, learning to balance ceremonial duties with modern security challenges. "The key," their instructor explained, "is understanding that stillness is not weakness. As Guard Anderson demonstrated, maintaining ceremonial bearing while being ready to respond appropriately is the highest form of professional discipline." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as more visitors filtered through the gates. Will noticed that tourists now commonly explained proper etiquette to each other, with parents teaching children about respect for tradition and those who upheld it. David Cooper, during a brief moment between crowds, spoke quietly. "Remember when our biggest concern was tourists taking selfies too close to the gate? Everything's different now." He was right. The incident had catalyzed a shift in how people viewed ceremonial guards. What once might have been seen as mere tourist attractions were now recognized as skilled professionals, maintaining important traditions while ensuring security. As the day drew to a close, Commander Mitchell conducted one final inspection. "The Palace Board is considering making your response part of the official tourist orientation video," she informed Will. "They believe it perfectly illustrates the balance between tradition and security that we strive to maintain." The sun was setting over Edinburgh, painting the palace stones in warm hues as Will prepared for the evening guard change. A week had passed since Ryan Thompson and his friends had tried to provoke a reaction, but the ripples of that incident continued to spread, touching aspects of palace life that no one could have predicted. 2 weeks after the incident, Stirling Palace was preparing for a special ceremony. The morning light filtered through the ancient windows of the guard quarters as Will Anderson adjusted his ceremonial uniform with extra care. Today wasn't just another shift at the East Gate. It was the official implementation of the new palace security protocols, and Will had been chosen to demonstrate them to an assembled group of international security experts. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell had spent the previous evening briefing him on the ceremony's significance. "This goes beyond just Stirling Palace now," she'd explained. "We're setting standards that will influence historical site security across Europe." The Great Hall had been prepared for the occasion, its medieval tapestries and gilded mirrors reflecting the early morning sunlight. Security personnel from various historical sites filled the rows of chairs, their diverse uniforms creating a colorful display of international cooperation. David Cooper met Will in the corridor leading to the hall. "Ready for your moment in the spotlight?" he asked, adjusting his friend's ceremonial sash. "Never thought standing still could cause such a stir." "It's not about standing still," Will replied, repeating the words that had become something of a mantra among the palace guards. "It's about standing firm." Commander Mitchell was waiting at the entrance to the Great Hall, her uniform pristine. "The palace board has prepared something special," she said cryptically. "They believe this moment deserves proper recognition." As Will entered the hall, he noticed several familiar faces in the audience. Lucy Walsh was there, seated next to palace security consultants. She had become something of an unofficial ambassador for responsible tourism since the incident, working with historical sites to promote respectful visitor behavior. Colonel Harrison stepped up to the podium, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks ago, a seemingly routine incident at our East Gate became a catalyst for change. Guard William Anderson's response to provocation demonstrated the perfect balance of tradition, dignity, and modern security awareness." The colonel gestured to a large screen where footage from that day began to play. Will watched himself maintaining perfect composure despite Ryan Thompson's taunts, then executing the precise, professional response when the situation required it. Seeing it from this perspective, he understood why it had resonated so strongly with security professionals. "Today," Colonel Harrison continued, "we're not just implementing new security protocols. We're recognizing that ceremonial guards at historical sites face unique challenges in the social media age. Our response must evolve while maintaining the dignity of our traditions." Commander Mitchell took the podium next, holding a document bearing the palace seal. "The Stirling Palace Board, in consultation with security experts from multiple countries, has established the Anderson Protocol, a comprehensive set of guidelines for maintaining ceremonial dignity while ensuring effective security in the modern era." A murmur of approval ran through the audience. Will maintained his professional bearing, but he felt a surge of pride. Having a security protocol named after him was an honor he had never anticipated. "Furthermore," Mitchell continued, "we're establishing an international training program for ceremonial guard units. Guard Anderson will serve as lead instructor, sharing his expertise in balancing traditional duties with contemporary challenges." The announcement was met with enthusiastic applause. Security officials from various sites nodded in approval. They had all faced similar challenges with social media provocateurs and recognized the value of standardized response protocols. As the ceremony proceeded, various speakers shared their perspectives on the incident's impact. A representative from the Royal Horse Guards in London described how the video had influenced their own protocol updates. A security consultant from Rome discussed how the Vatican's Swiss Guard had already adopted similar guidelines. Lucy Walsh was invited to speak about the tourist perspective. "What struck me most," she said, "was how Guard Anderson's response taught respect without compromising dignity. It changed how people view ceremonial guards, not as tourist attractions, but as professionals upholding important traditions." The ceremony concluded with the official signing of the new protocol documents. Will was called forward to add his signature alongside those of security chiefs from major historical sites across Europe. The moment symbolized a bridge between ceremonial tradition and modern security requirements. After the formal proceedings, Commander Mitchell pulled Will aside. "There's one more thing," she said, leading him to a smaller chamber off the main hall. Inside, displayed on an elegant wooden stand, was a framed photograph of Will at his post, standing perfectly at attention. Below it, a plaque read, "Guard, William Anderson," exemplifying the highest standards of ceremonial duty and professional response. "This will hang in the Palace Museum," Mitchell explained. "A reminder that tradition and adaptation can coexist with dignity." As Will returned to his post at the East Gate that afternoon, he noticed subtle changes in how visitors approached the palace guards. Children asked thoughtful questions about the guards' roles. Parents explained the importance of respect, and tourists maintained appropriate distances without being asked. David Cooper, at his post across the gate, spoke quietly during a moment between crowds. "You've changed things, mate. Not just here, but everywhere these uniforms stand for something." Will maintained his ceremonial stance, but he understood the truth in those words. Sometimes the most significant changes come not from grand gestures, but from simple moments of unwavering dignity. The incident with Ryan Thompson's group had lasted only minutes, but its impact would be felt for years to come. As the sun began its descent over Stirling Palace, casting long shadows across the ancient stones, Will reflected on how a single moment of maintained dignity had rippled out to affect ceremonial guards worldwide. The Anderson Protocol would ensure that future guards had clear guidelines for handling modern challenges while upholding ancient traditions. 1 month after the incident at Stirling Palace, Will Anderson's morning routine had taken on new significance. As he prepared for his shift, adjusting his ceremonial uniform in the guard quarters, he could hear the excited chatter of international guard trainees in the corridor outside. The palace had become a hub for ceremonial guard training, with representatives from historical sites worldwide coming to learn the Anderson Protocol. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell met him in the briefing room, holding a tablet displaying news coverage from various international sources. "Your protocol is making waves," she said, showing him footage from guards at Buckingham Palace successfully handling a similar situation with social media provocateurs. "They're calling it the Stirling Standard now." The morning sun streamed through the palace windows as Will made his way to the East Gate. The tourist crowds had changed noticeably over the past month. Visitors now approached with a different kind of interest, not just in photographing the guards, but in understanding the tradition and professionalism they represented. David Cooper was already at his post when Will arrived. "Did you see the latest training video from the Greek Presidential Guard?" he asked quietly as Will took his position. "They've incorporated your response technique into their standard procedures." The impact of the Anderson Protocol had indeed spread far beyond Stirling Palace. Security chiefs from historical sites across the globe had adopted and adapted the guidelines to their specific needs. The result was a new international standard for ceremonial guard conduct that maintained tradition while addressing modern challenges. As the morning progressed, a film crew from an international documentary channel set up their equipment at a respectful distance. They were working on a special feature about the evolution of ceremonial guard duties in the social media age, with Stirling Palace as their primary case study. The Anderson Protocol has revolutionized how we think about ceremonial security, the documentary's narrator explained to their audience. What began as one guard's measured response has become a global standard for professional excellence. Commander Mitchell approached during a quiet moment, speaking softly. The United Nations World Heritage Committee has requested a presentation on the protocol, she informed Will. They see it as a model for protecting living traditions in the digital age. The news highlighted how far the ripples had spread from that single incident with Ryan Thompson's group. What had started as a local security response had evolved into an international conversation about preserving ceremonial traditions while adapting to contemporary challenges. During his afternoon break, Will reviewed reports from various sites that had implemented the protocol. The Swiss Guard at Vatican City had successfully diffused several potential confrontations. The Royal Guard in Norway had prevented a planned social media prank before it could begin. Each success story validated the protocol's effectiveness. Lucy Walsh, who had become something of an unofficial ambassador for responsible tourism, had started a popular blog about respectful visitor behavior at historical sites. Her latest post, From Prankster to Protector, How One Guard Changed Tourist Culture, had gone viral in travel communities. The real revolution, she wrote, isn't just in how guards handle provocations. It's in how visitors view their role. We're seeing a cultural shift from treating ceremonial guards as photo opportunities to respecting them as guardians of living history. As Will resumed his afternoon post, he noticed a group of Japanese tourists following their guide's detailed explanation of proper etiquette around palace guards. The guide was using an official palace brochure that now included a section on the Anderson Protocol and its significance. These guards, the guide explained in careful English, represent not just tradition, but the perfect balance of historical dignity and modern security awareness. Stirling Palace has shown the world how to maintain this balance. David Cooper, during a brief moment between tourist groups, spoke quietly to Will. Remember when Ryan Thompson thought he could make a viral video mocking us? Now, the only viral videos are of guards handling situations perfectly. Indeed, social media had transformed from a potential threat to a powerful ally in promoting respectful behavior. The original video of Will's response had spawned countless educational posts about ceremonial guard protocols and the importance of respecting historical traditions. Commander Mitchell conducted her afternoon inspection with a group of international security consultants in tow. The Anderson Protocol, she explained to them, isn't just about handling provocations, it's about educating visitors and preventing incidents before they occur. The consultants nodded in appreciation, taking notes as Mitchell detailed how the protocol had reduced security incidents at Stirling Palace by over 70% in just 1 month. Similar results were being reported from other sites that had implemented the guidelines. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds, Will noticed a familiar face in the crowd. A reformed Ryan Thompson. He had returned to Stirling Palace, not to cause trouble, but to film an educational video about respecting ceremonial guards. His social media channel had completely transformed, now dedicated to promoting responsible tourism. The day's final tour group included several military officers from Asian countries, eager to observe the Anderson Protocol in action. Their presence underscored how a single incident at a Scottish palace had influenced ceremonial guard training across the globe. The protocol's success, Commander Mitchell had explained earlier, lies in its simplicity. It provides clear guidelines while allowing for cultural adaptation. Whether it's the terracotta warriors in China or the Royal Guard in Thailand, the principles remain effective. As the sun began to set over Stirling Palace, Will prepared for the evening guard change. The past month had transformed not just security protocols, but the very nature of interaction between ceremonial guards and the public they served. What had begun as a response to provocation had become a model for preserving tradition in the modern world. The Anderson Protocol would continue to evolve, adapting to new challenges while maintaining its core principles of dignity, respect, and professional response. But its foundation, the understanding that true strength lies in measured restraint, would remain unchanged, a lasting legacy of one guard's unwavering commitment to duty. 6 months after the incident that transformed Stirling Palace's security and protocols, Will Anderson stood at his post on a crisp autumn morning. The famous Edinburgh winds rustled through the palace grounds, carrying with them the sound of excited voices as another group of International Guard trainees arrived for their certification in the Anderson Protocol. The palace had evolved into more than just a historical landmark. It had become a global center for ceremonial guard excellence. The East Gate, where Will still maintained his regular post, was now considered hallowed ground in the world of ceremonial security training. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell approached just as the morning sun broke through the clouds. "The final numbers are in," she said quietly, standing at parade rest beside Will's post. Over 500 historical sites worldwide have now adopted some version of the protocol. Your response to one moment of provocation has literally changed how ceremonial guards operate across the globe. David Cooper, at his usual position across the gate, gave an almost imperceptible nod. He and Will had witnessed the transformation firsthand, watching as their daily duties became the standard by which ceremonial guards worldwide measured their professional conduct. The morning's first tour group approached, led by a guide who'd been specifically trained in the new palace protocols. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "you're standing at the very spot where the Anderson Protocol was born. This gate represents a turning point in how historical sites maintain their traditions while adapting to modern challenges." Will maintained his ceremonial stance, but he couldn't help reflecting on how much had changed. The tourist crowds were different now, more respectful, more interested in understanding the tradition than testing its boundaries. Children approached with quiet awe rather than giggling attempts at distraction. A group of security consultants from various UNESCO World Heritage sites gathered nearby, discussing the protocol's impact. "The statistics are remarkable," one consultant noted, reviewing data on his tablet. "Incidents of provocative behavior at historical sites have decreased by 80% worldwide since the implementation of these guidelines." Commander Mitchell had arranged for Will to speak at an international conference on historical site security the following week. His presentation would focus on how maintaining dignity in the face of provocation had become a cornerstone of modern ceremonial guard training. "Your experience has become required reading at military academies," Mitchell had told him during the morning briefing. "They're using it to teach not just security protocols, but the fundamental principles of professional bearing under pressure." As the morning progressed, Will noticed Lucy Walsh conducting a tour group of her own. She had completed her certification as an official palace guide, specializing in educational programs about ceremonial tradition and respectful tourism. Her transformation from a bystander in Ryan Thompson's group to an advocate for responsible visitor behavior symbolized the broader changes the incident had sparked. "The real power of the Anderson Protocol," Lucy explained to her group, "lies not in how it handles provocations, but in how it prevents them. By helping visitors understand the meaning behind the ceremony, we create respect rather than enforce it." During his afternoon break, Will reviewed the latest edition of the protocol, Handbook What had started as a simple set of response guidelines had evolved into a comprehensive framework for maintaining ceremonial traditions in the digital age. Security chiefs from places as diverse as the Imperial Palace in Japan and the Kremlin, guards in Russia had contributed their insights, creating a truly global standard. David Cooper joined him in the break room, carrying a newspaper featuring an article about the protocol's success. "Remember when we thought standing still was the hardest part of our job?" he asked with a slight smile. "Now we're teaching people that stillness is strength." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Will returned to his post. A fresh group of tourists approached, their cameras ready but their manner respectful. Among them was a familiar face, Ryan Thompson, now working as a social media consultant for historical sites, helping them develop positive online presences that promoted understanding rather than provocation. "The guard who changed everything," Ryan said quietly as he passed, nodding respectfully to Will. His transformation from provocateur to advocate was perhaps the most personal testament to the protocol's impact. Commander Mitchell conducted her final inspection of the day, accompanied by representatives from the International Committee for Historical Site Preservation. "The Anderson Protocol has become more than just a security measure," she explained. "To them, it's a bridge between ancient tradition and modern reality, showing how ceremonial institutions can maintain their dignity while adapting to contemporary challenges." As evening approached, Will prepared for the guard change ceremony. The ritual had taken on new significance in recent months, with visitors gathering to watch in respectful silence, understanding that they were witnessing not just a ceremony, but a living demonstration of the principles that had transformed historical site security worldwide. The setting sun painted Stirling Palace in shades of gold, its ancient stones standing witness to how one moment of maintained dignity had rippled out to affect ceremonial guards across the globe. The Anderson Protocol would continue to evolve, adapting to new challenges while preserving its core message that true strength lies not in reaction, but in unwavering commitment to duty and dignity. 1 year to the day after the incident that changed Stirling Palace forever, Will Anderson stood at his post in the early morning light. The anniversary had not gone unnoticed. Media outlets from around the world had gathered to cover what had become known in ceremonial guard circles as Protocol Day. The palace grounds were particularly busy this morning, with a special ceremony planned to commemorate the establishment of the Anderson Protocol. Dignitaries from various historical sites worldwide had arrived to participate in what had become an annual conference on ceremonial guard excellence. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell approached Will's post just as the sun cleared the ancient palace towers. "Hard to believe it's been a year," she said quietly. "Sometimes I wonder if Ryan Thompson realizes what he started that morning." Indeed, the changes over the past year had been remarkable. The Anderson Protocol had evolved from a simple security response into a comprehensive international standard for ceremonial guard conduct. More than 1,000 historical sites worldwide had now implemented some version of the guidelines. David Cooper, maintaining his position across the gate, caught Will's eye. They had both witnessed the transformation of Stirling Palace from a tourist attraction to a global center for ceremonial guard training. The East Gate, where they stood their daily watch, had become something of a pilgrimage site for security professionals studying the protocol. Guard Anderson's response that day, a tour guide explained to her group nearby, showed us that tradition and adaptation aren't mutually exclusive. The strength of ceremony lies not in rigid adherence to rules, but in maintaining dignity while facing modern challenges. The morning ceremony was scheduled to begin in the Great Hall, but Will would maintain his post as usual. Commander Mitchell had offered to have him participate in the proceedings, but he had declined. His place was here, at the gate, where it all began. demonstrating through action rather than words the principles that had become his legacy. Lucy Walsh arrived early, leading a special tour group of security consultants from various UNESCO World Heritage sites. Her transformation from uncomfortable bystander to respected authority on ceremonial protocol seemed to mirror the broader changes the incident had sparked. The genius of the Anderson Protocol, she explained to her group, is its simplicity. By focusing on dignity rather than confrontation, it changes not just how guards respond to provocations, but how visitors view ceremonial traditions. As the morning progressed, a documentary crew set up their equipment at a respectful distance. They were filming the final scenes of a feature about the protocol's global impact, interviewing security chiefs from various historical sites about how the guidelines had transformed their operations. Before the Anderson Protocol, one security chief explained to the camera, "We struggled to balance tradition with modern challenges. Now we have a framework that preserves dignity while addressing contemporary issues." Commander Mitchell returned during a quiet moment, accompanied by Colonel Harrison and several international military attachés. "The protocol has been adopted by military academies worldwide," she informed Will quietly. "They're using your response as a case study in professional bearing under pressure." The autumn breeze carried the sound of bagpipes from the palace courtyard, where the commemoration ceremony was beginning. Will maintained his post, but he could hear the speeches echoing across the grounds. 1 year ago, Colonel Harrison's voice rang out. A single moment of composed response changed how we think about ceremonial tradition in the modern age. The Anderson Protocol has shown us that dignity is not static. It adapts and grows while remaining true to its core principles. As the day continued, various groups passed through the East Gate, each with their own connection to the protocol's impact. Military cadets studied Will's stance and bearing, security consultants took notes on visitor management, and tourists demonstrated their understanding of the new behavioral standards. David Cooper spoke during a brief moment between crowds. "You've created something bigger than all of us," he said softly. "Every guard at every historical site stands taller because of what happened here." The afternoon brought a surprise visit from Ryan Thompson himself, now a respected consultant on social media ethics for historical sites. He had been invited to speak at the anniversary ceremony about the importance of responsible online behavior. "I came here a year ago thinking I could make a viral video mocking tradition," he told the assembled audience. "Instead, I became part of a movement that showed how tradition can thrive in the digital age." Commander Mitchell conducted her afternoon inspection with special attention to detail, knowing that the eyes of the international security community were on Stirling Palace today. "The protocol's success," she explained to visiting officials, "lies in its balance of firmness and flexibility. It provides clear guidelines while allowing for cultural adaptation." As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, Will reflected on the year's changes. The incident that had begun as a simple response to provocation had grown into a global standard for ceremonial conduct, influencing how historical sites worldwide maintained their traditions while facing modern challenges. The evening guard change ceremony took on special significance, with visitors gathering in respectful silence to witness what had become a demonstration of the protocol's principles in action. Each precise movement, each maintained position, spoke to the power of dignity in the face of provocation. Dawn broke over Stirling Palace as Will Anderson prepared for another day at his post. This morning held special significance. It marked the final implementation phase of the Anderson Protocol across all major historical sites worldwide. The morning light painted the ancient stones in shades of gold, seemingly highlighting the profound changes of the past year. If you enjoyed this story of dignity and respect, make sure to check out our other inspiring tales. Click above for more remarkable stories that will touch your heart. Commander Elizabeth Mitchell waited in the briefing room, holding a leather-bound volume, the first official printing of the complete Anderson Protocol Manual. This goes into every major historical site's security office today, she said, handling the book with reverence. Your name will be remembered wherever ceremonial guards stand watch. David Cooper joined them, his uniform pristine as always. Heard they're already talking about next year's protocol summit, he mentioned. Guards from every continent want to participate. We'll need a bigger venue than the Great Hall. The palace grounds were already filling with visitors, but there was a noticeable difference in how they carried themselves. Gone were the days of thoughtless provocations and disrespectful behavior. Instead, tourists approached with understanding and appreciation for the traditions they witnessed. Lucy Walsh arrived early, leading another specialized tour group. She had become one of the palace's most respected guides, her first-hand experience, with the protocol's origins lending special weight to her presentations. What we witness here, she told her group, is not just ceremony. It's living history adapting to modern times without losing its essence. International news crews had set up their equipment at respectful distances, preparing to broadcast. The day's ceremonies worldwide. The Anderson Protocol had become more than just a security measure. It had evolved into a symbol of how traditional institutions could maintain their dignity while adapting to contemporary challenges. The protocol's success, Commander Mitchell explained to a gathering of security chiefs, lies in its universal applicability. Whether it's the Tower of London or the Forbidden City in Beijing, these principles transcend cultural boundaries. Will maintained his post at the East Gate, where everything had begun. Though his name now appeared in security manuals and training programs worldwide, he found the greatest satisfaction in simply performing his duty with unwavering dignity. Each perfectly maintained stance, each composed response to visitor questions, demonstrated the protocol's principles in action. Ryan Thompson had sent a message to the palace, read during the morning briefing. His social media consulting firm now specialized in promoting respectful engagement with historical sites. What began as my worst moment became the catalyst for positive change, he wrote. The Anderson Protocol showed me that tradition isn't a target for mockery. It's a bridge to understanding our shared heritage. As the day progressed, Will noticed small groups of guards in training observing from various vantage points. They had come from historical sites worldwide to witness firsthand the protocol's implementation at its birthplace. Their presence reminded him how far the ripples had spread from that single moment of composed response. The truly remarkable thing, David Cooper commented during a quiet moment, is how it's changed not just guard protocol, but visitor behavior worldwide. People come to these sites now seeking understanding rather than entertainment. Commander Mitchell conducted her afternoon inspection with a group of UNESCO representatives in tow. The Anderson Protocol has become a model for preserving living traditions in the digital age, she explained. It shows how historical institutions can maintain their integrity while engaging with modern challenges. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Will continued his watch. Each tourist group that passed demonstrated the protocol's impact. Cameras were raised with respect, questions were asked with genuine interest, and the space around the guards was maintained with understanding rather than enforcement. Lucy Walsh's afternoon tour group included several social media influencers who had come to learn about responsible content creation at historical sites. The protocol taught us that dignity isn't about remaining static, she explained. It's about maintaining principles while adapting to change. As evening approached, Commander Mitchell returned to the East Gate with news that brought everything full circle. The International Committee for Historical Preservation has officially designated the Anderson Protocol as the global standard for ceremonial guard conduct, she announced quietly. Your response to that moment of provocation will guide generations of guards to come. Sit. The setting sun painted Stirling Palace in shades of amber as Will prepared for the evening guard change. The ceremony had taken on new meaning over the past year, becoming not just a change of watch, but a demonstration of the principles that had transformed ceremonial guard service worldwide. Tomorrow would bring new visitors, new challenges, and new opportunities to demonstrate the protocol's effectiveness. But the foundation had been laid, a legacy of dignity, respect, and adaptive tradition that would continue to influence historical sites worldwide. Don't miss out on more inspiring stories like this one. Click above to discover our next remarkable tale of courage, dignity, and unwavering principles. Each story has been carefully selected to touch your heart and uplift your spirit. Subscribe now to join our community of readers who appreciate stories of honor, respect, and positive change. Hit that notification bell to never miss our latest uploads of extraordinary true tales that remind us of the power of human dignity. Remember, 2 more amazing stories await you above. Click now to continue your journey through these inspiring narratives that showcase the best of human character and courage.